I stand here tonight and look back on what happened 40 years ago. I can only and truly say that this world has changed. It is a different America today than it was 40 years ago. Now, I didn't grow up in a very big city like him. I didn't grow up in a very big city like Akron, or Canton, or Cleveland, Columbus, or Cincinnati. I grew up on a farm in rural Alabama about 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My parents were sharecroppers. Mommy. Back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4. How many of you remember when you were 4 years old? What happened to the rest of us? But in 1944, when I was 4 years old, my father had saved $300. And with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. My family still owns that land today in rural Alabama. On this farm, we raise a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. Now, I know here at this great university, in this great city, in this great state, you're smart, you're wonderful. You send unbelievable people to Washington, but you don't know anything about raising chickens. Let me tell you what I had to do as a young boy growing up in rural Alabama during the 40s and the 50s. When the setting hen was set, I had to take the fresh eggs and mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Now, some of you may be saying, now, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more eggs. You had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? Well, if you don't follow me, it's okay. When these little chicks were hatched, I would fool these setting hens. I would cheat on these setting hens. I would take these little chicks and give them to another hen. Or put them in a box with a lantern. Raise them on their own, get some more fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under their setting hen. I kept on cheating on this setting hen. And when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. It's not the most loving thing to do or the most non-violent thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator hatcher from the Susan Roebuck store. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember, we used to get the Susan Roebuck catalog. Yeah. Any of you old enough to remember? Yeah. That big book? Yeah. It's pretty heavy, thick. Some people call it a watering book. Some people call it a wish book. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. So I just kept on wishing. As a young child, I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to preach the gospel. So from time to time, to help my brothers and sisters and my first cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard, like we gather here in this beautiful hall. My brothers and sisters, and first cousins, and the chickens will make up the congregation of the audience. I would start speaking or preaching, and I recall some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced, Senator Brown, that some of these chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listen to me today in the Congress. As a matter of fact, some of these chickens were just a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. That's enough of that story. As a young child growing up in rural Alabama, I tasted the bitter fruits of racism and I didn't like it. I saw those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. On a Saturday afternoon with some of my brothers and sisters and first cousins, we would go downtown to the little town of Troy, to the theater. And all of us little black children had to go upstairs to the balcony. All of the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. I would come home and ask my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why segregation? Why racial discrimination? They would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in the way. But one day in 1955, when I was 15 years old, in the 10th grade, I heard the voice of Martin Luther King Jr. on our radio. He was talking about the discipline and philosophy of nonviolence. He was talking about Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. He was talking about the ability of a committed, determined people to make a difference in our society. But I heard his voice. I felt like he was talking directly to me. I knew then it was possible to strike a blow against legalized segregation and racial discrimination. I made a decision. I had an executive session with myself. I decided to get in trouble. I decided to get in the way, but it was good trouble. It was necessary trouble. Another generation of young people, another generation of students and teachers, another generation of men and women, black and white, had the courage, had the capacity, had the ability to get in the way. They put aside the comfort of their own lives and they got involved in the circumstances of others. Allison, William, Jeffrey, and Sandra. And 9 other students who were also wounded put aside the comfort of their own lives to get involved in the circumstances of others. They did not have friends or family in Cambodia. But they heard the call, they heard the voice, they heard the trumpet sound, and they responded. They heard the call of Martin Luther King Jr. and others who had spoken out against the war in Vietnam. They had seen the value of nonviolent, peaceful protests to bring change in America. So they decided to get in trouble. They decided to get in the way with good trouble, necessary trouble. But it was dangerous, very dangerous to speak truth to power in those days. These young people had heard about an incident that happened only 6 years before, the Freedom Summer of 1964. In 1964, it was almost impossible for people of color living in the South to register to vote. In a state like the state of Mississippi, that had a black voting age population of more than 450,000 and only about 16,000 blacks were registered to vote. A little town like Selma, Alabama, in 1964, 1965, only 2.1% of blacks of voting age were registered to vote. One county in Alabama, Lowndes County, between Selma and Montgomery, the county was more than 80% African American. There was not a single registered African American voter in the county. You had to pass a so-called literacy test. Interpretation section of the Constitution of the state of Alabama. On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. Another occasion, a man was asked to count the number of jelly beans in a jar. People stood in unmovable lines. My old organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC, SNC, recruited more than 1,000 students, teachers, ministers, priests, rabbis, nuns, lawyers, and doctors to come to Mississippi. The summer night of June 21st, 1964, 3 young men that I knew, Andy Goodman, Mika Schreiner, and James Straney went out to investigate the burning of an African-American church being used for voter registration workshop. These three young men were stopped by the sheriff, arrested, taken to jail. Later that same night, they were taken from jail, turned over to the Klan, but they were beaten, shot, and killed. Like a 4 young student here. These young people didn't die in Cambodia. They didn't die in Vietnam. They didn't die in the Middle East or Eastern Europe. They didn't die in Africa or Central or South America. They died right here in our own country. And we must never, ever forget what happened here at Kent State, at Jackson State, or what happened to the three civil rights workers. Their lives must not. Allison, Jeffrey, Sandra, and William. I knew they heard about the deaths of Shane Goodman and Schreiner. They also knew about what happened to Selma, Alabama, and what happened there just 1 year later. The story of Selma reminded me so much of what those 500 young people faced on May 4th, 1970, right here on this campus. In Selma. Because people have been denied the right to protest, the right to speak up, the right to speak out, to assemble, the right to register to vote. Matter of fact, in Selma, Alabama, in January 1965, there was a sheriff by the name of Jim Clark. There was a very big man who wore a gun on one side, a nightstick on the other side. He carried an electric cap powder in his hand, and he didn't use it on cows. He wore a button on his left lapel. Dave and I led a group of black citizens to the courthouse just to try to get up a set of steps, through a set of double doors, and get a copy of the so-called literacy test. Sheriff Clark met me and said, "John Lewis, you're not a spot agitator, you're the lowest form of humanity." I looked Sheriff Clark straight in the eye. I said, "Sheriff, I may be an agitator, but I'm not an outsider. I grew up only 90 miles from here, and we're going to stay here until these people are allowed to register to vote." And he said, "You're under arrest." He arrested me along with 60 other people, took us to jail. A few days later, Martin Luther King Jr. and others came to Selma, and Dr. King, and more than 300 people were arrested. We filled the city jail, the city stockade, the county jail. Then about 35 miles from Selma, in a little place called Marion, Alabama, the hometown of Coretta Scott King, home county of the late Mrs. Andrew Young and Mrs. Rath Abernathy. There was a demonstration for the right to vote. A confrontation occurred, and a young man by the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson, who tried to protect his mother, was shot in the stomach by a state trooper and died. But because of what happened to him, we made a decision to march from Selma to Montgomery, to dramatize to the nation and to the world that people of color wanted to register to vote. So Sunday, March 7, 1965, about 600 of us left a little church called Brown Chapel AME Church, lined up in twos, walking in an orderly, peaceful, non-violent fashion on the sidewalk of a bridge. called the Edmund Pettus Bridge, crossing the Alabama River. A young man by the name of Jose Williams from Dr. King's organization was walking with me. We get to the edge of the bridge, crossing the river. Jose Williams said to me, "John, can you swim?" I said, "No." "Jose, can you swim?" He said, "Yes, Luke." So, well, that's too much water there. We're not going to jump. We're not going back. We're going forward. At that time, I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. In this backpack, I had 2 books. I wanted to have something to read in jail. I thought we were going to be arrested. I had an apple and I had an orange. I wanted to have something to eat. An apple and an orange wouldn't last long. Had toothpaste and toothbrush. Since I'm going to be in jail with my friends, my colleagues, and neighbors, I wanted to be able to brush my teeth. We get to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Down below, we saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. And we continue to walk. And we come within hearing distance of the state troopers. A man identified himself and said, "I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers. This is an unlawful march. You will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your church." Jose Williams said, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." In less than a minute, the major said, "Troopers, advance." The men came toward us, beating us with nightsticks and bullwhips, shrimping us with horses, and releasing the tear gas. On that day, when I was hit, I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die. It's important to tell the story. That we continue, all of us must tell the story of Kent State, of Jackson State, of Selma, the story of Orangeburg. We must continue to tell the story so we will remember and young people will know that the struggle for justice has been so long. A hard road littered by the battered and broken bodies of countless men and women who paid the ultimate price for the person's right this nation holds so dear. The right to speak up and speak out, the right to protest, the right to organize, the right to worship what we want to worship, and the right to vote. We must never ever forget that we all have a right in this country to protest for what is right. It is guaranteed and protected by the Constitution. We all have a right to stand up and speak out against violence in our community, violence in our culture, and violence around our nation, and violence around the world. The sacrifice that Allison, Jeffrey, Sandra, and William made, and for all those who were wounded and who participated in the protest 40 years ago, are saying today to all of us, whether we like it or not, that war is bloody, war is messy, war is obsolete as a tool of our foreign policy, and we must come to that point. We must come to that point as a great nation, as a great people, that we lay down the tools and instruments of violence and war. War tend not just to hide the truth, but to sacrifice the truth. They're saying yes in their death. And we must study war. Sometime I said to my colleagues in the United States House of Representatives, it is strange to me that we learn to swim in the ocean like a fish. We can fly in the air like birds. We can shoot a rocket to the moon. But we have not learned how to live together as brothers and sisters on this little spaceship we call Earth. Gandhi said it one way. Gandhi said it is either nonviolence or non-existent. Martin Luther King Jr. said it another way. We must either learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. There's still a need in this country to stand up and speak out against the incapacity of war to solve human problems and the power of nonviolence to bring about peaceful change. In this nation 40 years ago, we witnessed what I call a nonviolent revolution under the rule of law. A revolution of values and ideas that changed our nation and this world forever. Because of what happened in Selma, the summoned the president of this nation to the halls of Congress. On March 15th, Lyndon Johnson came and made one of the most meaningful speeches any American president had made in modern time on the whole question of voting rights and civil rights. Lyndon Johnson started that speech off that night by saying, "I speak tonight for the dignity of man and for the destiny of democracy." You said at times, history and fate meet in a single place in man unending search for freedom. So it was more than a century ago at Lexington and at Concord. So it was at Appomattox. So it was last week in Selma, Alabama. He condemned the violence in Selma, introduced the Voting Rights Act, and before he concluded that speech, he said, "And we shall overcome." I was sitting next to Martin Luther King Jr. in the home of a local family. And Lyndon Johnson said, "And we shall overcome." I looked at Dr. King and tears came down his face. He cried. We all cried. Without Selma, without the nonviolent revolution, there would be no Barack Obama as President of the United States today.
All right.
If I can state, we wouldn't be where we are. I want to thank the President. I want to thank the board, the faculty, and the students, and all of you who move in with speed for generation year number one. Not to forget what happened here. To have this site as a historic site. People will learn, people will study, and generations will come. They will know that people around the world are not convinced by our bombs, our missiles, our guns. They were inspired by our ability, a nonviolent direct action to bring peaceful change, dramatic change in our country and around the world. Those of us in the movement discovered long ago, and I know here at Kent State, the young people that are studying must learn and continue to learn, that our struggle to redeem the soul of America is not a struggle that lasts for one day, or 1 week, or 1 month, or 1 year, or 1 school term. It is a struggle of a lifetime to build an all-inclusive world community based on simple justice, an all-inclusive society that values the dignity and the worth of every human being. That community is what I like to call the beloved community. Consider those 2 words. Beloved community. Beloved means not hateful, not violent, not uncaring, not unkind. And community means not separated, not polarized, not locked in struggle. And as leaders of the 21st century, You can move our society forward by standing up for what you believe in. Stand up, speak up, and speak out. Don't give up, don't give in, and don't give up. Just like Allison, Jeffrey, Sandra, William, just like Cheney, Goodman, Schwerner, like Medgar Evers and Martin Luther King Jr. You must be maladjusted to the problems and conditions of today. You must find a way to dramatize your issue, and you must find a way to get in the way. You just have to get in the way and make your voices heard. I got in the way. I got beaten. I went to jail, arrested 40 times, left bloody and unconscious at the Greyhound bus station in Montgomery on the Freedom Run. Had a concussion on that bridge, but I didn't give up. I didn't give in. I didn't become bitter or hostile. And I said to each and every one of you here in this community, you must never, ever become bitter. Never be hateful. The way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence is a much better way. And I said tonight, you have a mandate from the spirit of history. You have a mandate to follow the footsteps of those brave and courageous men and women who fought to make a difference. You have a mandate from the 3 young men who gave their lives in the red clay of Mississippi. You have a mandate from the 4 young people who were shot and killed on this campus 4 years ago. You must make sure that generation to come will not forget. It is your turn. It is our turn to build a beloved community. I want to close with a story from my childhood that I think symbolizes the commitment that we must make to justice no matter how difficult the path. When I was growing up many, many years ago in rural Alabama, when I was only 4 or 5 years old, I have an aunt by the name of Seneva. And my Aunt Seneva lived in what we call a shotgun house. I know what I'm talking about because I was born in a shotgun house. I know here at Kent State, at this great university, in this part of Ohio, you never seen a shotgun house. You don't even know what I'm talking about. For those of you who may not know what a shotgun house is, in a non-violent sense of the old house, one way in, where you can bounce a basketball through the front door and it will go straight out the back door. But one Saturday afternoon, a group of my brothers and sisters and a few of my first cousins, about 12 or 15 of us young children, while playing in my Aunt Seneva dirt yard, and an unbelievable storm came up. The wind started blowing, the thunder started rolling, the lightning started flashing, and the rain started beating on the timber for this old shotgun house. Aunt became terrified, started crying. She thought this old house was going to go away. When one corner of this old house appeared to be lifted from its foundation, she had us to walk to that corner to try to hold the house down with other bodies. When the other corner appeared to be lifted, she had us to walk to that side to try to hold the house down. We were little children walking with the wind, but we never ever left the house. My friends, the storm may come, the wind may blow, the thunder may roll, the lightning may flash, and the rain may beat down on our old house. Call it the house of Kent State University. Call it the house of Ohio. Call it the house of Cleveland. Call it the American house. Call it the world house. We all live in the same house. We must never, ever leave the house. This is our house. Maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships. We're all in the same boat now. It doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or no degree. It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We're one people, we're one family, and we're one house. Stay with the house. So I say to you tonight, whatever happens, whatever comes, walk with the wind, and let the spirit of history be your guide. Hang in there. Keep the faith. And keep your eyes on the prize. Thank you very much. Maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships. We're all in the same boat now. Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My parents were sharecroppers.
Mommy.
Back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4. How many of you remember when you were 4 years old? What happened to the rest of us? But in 1944, when I was 4 years old, my father had saved $300. And with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. My family still owns that land today in rural Alabama. On this farm, raise eggs and mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Now some of you may be saying, now John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen will get on that same nest, and there will be some more eggs. You had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? Well, if you don't follow me, it's okay. But these little chicks were hatched. I would fool these setting hens. I would cheat on these setting hens. I would take these little chicks and give them to another hen. Or put them in a box with a lantern. Raise them on their own, get some more fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under their setting hen. I kept on cheating on this setting hen. And when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. It's not the most loving thing to do or the most non-violent thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator hatcher from the Susan Roebuck store. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember we used to get the. I stand here tonight and look back on what happened 40 years ago. I can only and truly say that this world has changed. It is a different America today than it was 40 years ago. Now, I didn't grow up in a very big city like him. I didn't grow up in a very big city like Akron or Canton or Cleveland, Columbus, or Cincinnati. I grew up on a farm in rural Alabama about 50 miles from a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. Now I know here at this great university, in this great city, in this great state, you're smart, you're wonderful. You send unbelievable people to Washington, but you don't know anything about raising chickens. Let me tell you what I had to do as a young boy growing up in rural Alabama during the 40s and the 50s. When the setting hen was set, and to take the fresh